Hi everyone, in this video we're going to look at installing crash sliders for the BMW F800ST. They're made by a company called SW Motech, and the reason I went for them is because they do not require any drilling or alteration of the side fairings. So the first thing we did is we unpacked our box and laid out all the components on a board so that we could check the contents against the sheet that was given us with all the quantities. Also in the box came the instructions, but they seem to only have packed the instructions for the right hand side. So we're going to start there, see what parts are left over, and do the left hand side after that. So we need to remove the fairing before we can do any work. There are 4 bolts on the top, 2 in the front, 2 along the bottom, and they all use a Torx screwdriver size 25. Now that our fairing is loose, it's best to get it out of the way, and to do that we need to disconnect this wire that runs to the indicator. It connects via a little watertight connector. There's a little tab that you lift and it just slides right out. So we'll put that in a safe place while we work on the frame. So to start the assembly of the sliders, we're going to need 3 of the 6 smaller Allen key bolts. This steel plate, note which side the countersink is on. This is for the right hand side of the bike. And this aluminium block. At this point you'll notice a bit of an inconsistency in the video. This part is going to be installed in a later step. I just had to come back due to a small oversight on my part and very poor instructions on the part of SW Motech. I had fastened the incorrect aluminium block onto the steel bracket. So what you want to look for is the right hand side bracket looks like this, and you want to install the aluminium block onto that triad of holes there with the little beveled edge on top. Okay, that's just to make that perfectly clear. So we're going to grab the 3 out of 6 stubby little Allen bolts, apply a bit of Loctite, and get the aluminium block back on here. Right, that's just to clarify that. Before our bracket goes onto the bike, we have one more thing to do. We need, for the right hand side, we need the shortest little threaded bushing in the pack, and if you look, one side has a nice open end to the thread and the other side is a slightly smaller gap because it has a jagged little lip. That is the side that we're going to insert this little rubber stopper into, and the way to do that is to stick it in one side like that, pinch it, and then with a screwdriver get the little edges in, maybe give it a twist, nearly there. Yeah, that's it, that's not going anywhere. A bit of Loctite on the screw. This is going to be one of the big screws. There's only 2 of them in the pack. And that goes in the top of the bracket there. This is a 6mm Allen screw. A pair of vice grips might come in handy here if you grip that and tighten it all the way in. If you're following the instructions, you will notice that they've left out a very crucial step. We need to remove this bolt right here It's a Torx head screw size 50. The big bolt on the bottom of the bracket of the slider is going to go right in there and replace this bolt. So decide whether you want to hold on to it. Okay, we're ready to mount our bracket onto the bike. As you can see, there are going to be 3 screw points. It's better to start with the 2 middle ones, because if you start at the bottom, you're going to have to insert the sleeves in behind your bracket, and that can be a little tricky. What we need are 2 of the medium screws with 2 of the small washers, a little bit of Loctite on the threads, and 2 spacers. Now there are 4 spacers that might look the same, but 2 of them are slightly shorter. These are the ones that we need for the right hand side. They are 50 mil long, the others are 52 mil, and they're for the left hand side of the bike. So, as normal, screws into the bracket, spacers on, maybe a little extra dab of Loctite just to have it fresh. And these use a 5mm Allen key. You may need to just bring the hose down a little bit to get your screws in position. Once they're there, carefully get them into the thread. Before you tighten these 2 screws all the way, take the longest spacer from the pack and insert it in the bottom part of the bracket there. Now you're free to tighten these up completely. Take the longest bolt in the pack. There are 2 long ones. One is 140, one is 130mm. Put some Loctite onto it. Take one of the big washers, get that on there, and that goes in the very bottom part of the bracket. There we go. Again, that's a big 8mm Allen key. Drive it home. And there we have our main bracket in place, ready for the fairing to be put back on. Before we put the fairing on, a few dabs of ACF 50 on these screws will just help keep corrosion at bay. They look like good quality screws, but you never know. Okay, now we're ready to get the fairing back on. The electrical connector for the indicator just pops back in. Give it a good squeeze, and then to get the fairing on, you have to be careful of the aluminium block here. So we need to make sure it comes through this little hole, and as we're getting it into place, it should just pop out nicely like that. Get the fairing up into place and put one screw in any one of these top holes here. That'll just keep the whole thing together. There we go, nearly done. Get all the screws in. Don't forget there are 4 in the top, 2 in the front and 2 along the bottom. And then we can complete our slider for the right hand side. And what we need for this part is one of the base plates, Visconite. Those 2 are going to go together like that, and 2 of the smaller bolts in the kit. They should pop out the bottom like that. The head sits almost flush at the top. We apply a bit of Loctite. And we take it all home with a 5mm Allen key. Okay, a little more ACF 50. Okay, now the final touch is to put the little nameplate on. For those of you who don't mind giving companies free advertising, you'll be putting it in place like this. I'm going to put it in place like this. Take the two little screws that you'll find in the kit. One on each side, and now we have protected fairings. For the sake of time, I've skipped the removal of the fairing for the left hand side and come straight to the point at which we install our pre-made bracket. As with the other side, this bolt comes out, and as you can see, all of our threads are easily accessible, this side being a whole lot easier than the right. And here we have our bracket ready made, just as we did on the other side. We have our 3 bolts ready to go, washer in on this side, sleeves on the other side. We'll apply some Loctite. Now we can take it home. Okay. 8mm Allen key on the bottom, and 5mm Allen keys in the middle bolts. As with the right hand side, the little nameplate finishes off the job, and we're left with an attractive slider, I must say. Maybe a little bit big in my opinion, but hopefully in the unfortunate event of a slide we won't need to look for new fairings every single time.